we'll read a little bit from Srila Prabhupada's Lila Amrita and then start class. Like a paragraph or? This is nectar because we were going to read it yesterday with my husband and we didn't get a chance, so I'm getting a chance now. So this is the beginning, childhood. As the servant pushed the baby carriage into the wide expanse of Harrison Road, timing his crossing between the bicycles and horse-drawn hackneys, the two children in the pram gazed up at the fair sky and tall trees across the road. Sounds and sights of the hackneys with their large wheels spinning over the road caught the fascinated attention of the two children. The servant steered the carriage toward the arched gateway within the red sandstone wall, bordering the Radha Govinda Mandira, and as Abhay and his friend rode underneath the ornate metal arch and into the courtyard, they saw high above them 2 stone lions, the heralds and protectors of the temple compound, their right paws extending. In the courtyard was a circular drive, and on the oval lawn were lampposts with gas lights and a statue of a young woman in robes. Sharply chirping sparrows flitted in the shrubs and trees or hopped across the grass, pausing to peck the ground, while choruses of pigeons cooed, sometimes abruptly flapping their wings overhead, saying off to another perch or descending to the courtyard. Voices chattered as Bengalis moved to and fro, dressed in simple cotton saris and white dhotis. Someone paused by the carriage to amuse the golden-skinned boys with their shining dark eyes, but mostly people were passing by quickly, going into the temple. The heavy double doors leading into the inner courtyard were open, and the servant eased the carriage wheels down a foot-deep step and proceeded through the foyer, then down another step and into the bright sunlight of the main courtyard. There they faced a stone statue of Garuda, perched on a 4-foot column. This carrier of Vishnu, Garuda, half man, half bird, kneeled on one knee, his hands folded prayerfully, his eagle's beak strong, and his wings poised behind him. The carriage moved ahead past 2 servants sweeping and washing the stone courtyard. It was just a few paces across the courtyard to the temple. The temple area itself, opened like a pavilion, was a raised platform with a stone roof supported by stout pillars 15 feet tall. At the end of the temple pavilion stood a crowd of worshippers viewing the deities on the altar. The servant pushed the carriage closer, lifted the 2 boys out, and then, holding their hands, escorted them reverentially before the deities. Srila Prabhupada: I can remember standing at the doorway of Radha Govinda temple saying prayers to Radha Govinda Murti. I would watch for hours together. The deity was so beautiful, and his eyes slanted. Srila Prabhupada. I think we can all agree that the deities look beautiful today as well. Every day, but today especially. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 3, entitled Talks Between Lord Shiva and Sati. Text 23. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam Yati Yate Tatra Pumam Apavritam Sadve Chatasmin Bhagavan Vasudevo Yadokshacho Me Namasa Vidyate Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam Yad iyate tatra pumama pavrita Sattve chatasmin bhagavan vasudevo Yadokshajo me nimasa vidiyate Sattvam vishuddham vasudeva shaktitam Yad iyate tatra pumana pavrita Sattve chatasmin bhagavan vasudevo Yadokshajo me namasa vidiyate Sattvam, consciousness. Vishuddham, pure. Vasudeva, Shabditam, known as. Yat, because. Iyate, is revealed. Tatra, there. Puman, the Supreme Person. Apavrita, without any covering. Sattve, in consciousness. Cha, and. Tasmin, in that. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vasudeva, he, because. Adokshaja, transcendental. Me, by me. Namasa, with obeisances. Vidiyate, worshipped. Translation. I am always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness, in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Vasudeva, is revealed without any covering. Purport. It's a really long purport, but it's nectar. So let's see if we can focus. The living entity is constitutionally pure. Asango hiyayam purusha. In the Vedic literature, it is said that the soul is always pure and uncontaminated by material attachment. The identification of the body with the soul is due to misunderstanding. As soon as one is fully Krishna conscious, it is to be understood that one is in his pure, original constitutional position. This state of existence is called Shuddha Sattva, which means that it is transcendental to the material qualities. Since this Shuddha Sattva existence is under the direct action of the internal potency, in this state the activities of material consciousness stop. For example, when iron is put into a fire, it becomes warm, and when red hot, although it is iron, it acts like fire. Similarly, when copper is surcharged with electricity, its action as copper stops. It acts as electricity. Bhagavad Gita 14:26 also confirms that anyone who engages in unadulterated devotional service to the Lord is at once elevated to the position of pure Brahman. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhoyaya kalpate. Therefore, Shuddha Sattva, as described in this verse, is the transcendental position, which is technically called Vasudeva. Vasudeva is also the name of the person from whom Krishna appears. This verse explains that the pure state is called Vasudeva because in that state, Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed without any covering. To execute unadulterated devotional service, therefore, one must follow the rules and regulations of devotional service without desire to gain material profit by fruitive activities or mental speculation. It's interesting because when I was reading the verse, I was like, why is the first Vasudeva without a long A and then Krishna? Prabhupada explained why. So there's Vasudeva with short A, which is the consciousness in which Krishna appears, and then there's Vasudeva, which is Krishna. In pure devotional service, one simply serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a matter of duty, without reason and without being impeded by material conditions. That is called Shuddha Sattva, or Vasudeva, because in that stage, the Supreme Person, Krishna, is revealed in the heart of the devotee. Srila Jiva Goswami has very nicely described this Vasudeva, or Shuddha Sattva, in his Bhagavad Sandarbha. He explains that Ashtotara Sata Shata 108 is added to the name of the spiritual master to indicate one who is situated in Shuddha Sattva, or in the transcendental state of Vasudeva. The word Vasudeva is also used for other purposes. For example, Vasudeva also means one who is everywhere, or all-pervading. The sun is also called Vasudeva Shabditam. The word Vasudeva may be utilized for different purposes, but whatever purpose we adopt, Vasudeva means the all-pervading or localized Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita 7:19, it is also stated, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Factual realization is to understand Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and surrender unto him. Vasudeva is the ground wherein Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed. When one is free from the contamination of material nature and is situated in pure Krishna consciousness, or in the Vasudeva state, Vasudeva, the Supreme Person, is revealed. This state is also called Kaivalya, which means pure consciousness. Jnanam Sattvikam Kaivalyam. When one is situated in pure, transcendental knowledge, one is situated in Kaivalya. Therefore, Vasudeva also means Kaivalya, a word which is generally used by impersonalists. Impersonal Kaivalya is not the last stage of realization, but in Krishna consciousness, Kaivalya, when one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one is successful. In that pure state, by hearing, chanting, remembering, etc., because of the development of knowledge of the science of Krishna, one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All these activities are under the guidance of the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The action of the internal potency is also described in this verse as apavrita, free from any covering. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, His name, His form, His quality, His paraphernalia, etc., being transcendental, are beyond material nature, it is not possible to understand any one of them with the materialistic senses. When the senses are purified by the discharge of pure devotional service, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktiruchate, the pure senses can see Krishna without covering. Now one may inquire that since factually the devotee has the same material existential body, how is it possible that the same materialistic eyes become purified by devotional service? The example, as stated by Lord Chaitanya, is that devotional service cleanses the mirror of the mind. In a clean mirror, one can see one's face very distinctly. Similarly, simply by cleansing the mirror of the mind, one can have a clear conception of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 8.8, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena. By executing one's prescribed duties in devotional service, Chaitasa Nanya Gamina, or simply by hearing about God and chanting about Him, if one's mind is always engaged in chanting and hearing and is not allowed to go elsewhere, one can realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As confirmed by Lord Chaitanya, by the Bhakti Yoga process, beginning from hearing and chanting, one can cleanse the heart and mind. And thus one can clearly see the face of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Shiva said that since his heart was always filled with the conception of Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of the Supreme Lord's presence within his mind and heart, he was always offering obeisances unto that Supreme Godhead. In other words, Lord Shiva is always in trance, samadhi. This samadhi is not under the control of the devotee. It is under the control of Vasudeva. For the entire internal energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead acts under his order. Of course, the material energy also acts by his order, but his direct will is specifically executed through the spiritual energy. Thus, by his spiritual energy, he reveals himself. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 4.6, Sambhavami Atma Mayaya. Atma Mayaya means internal potency. By his sweet will, he reveals himself by his internal potency, being satisfied by the transcendental loving service of the devotee. The devotee never commands, "My dear Lord, please come here so I can see you." It is not the position of the devotee to command the Supreme Personality of Godhead to come before him or to dance before him. There are many so-called devotees who command the Lord to come before them, dancing. The Lord, however, is not subject to anyone's command, but he is satisfied by one's pure devotional activities. But if he's satisfied by one's pure devotional activities, he reveals himself. Therefore, a meaningful word in this verse is adokshaja, for it indicates that the activities of our material senses will fail to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead simply by the attempt of one's speculative mind, but if one desires, he can subdue all the material activities of the senses, and the Lord, by manifesting his spiritual energy, can reveal himself to the pure devotee. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead reveals himself to the pure devotee, the devotee has no other duty than to offer him respectful obeisances. The Absolute Truth reveals himself to the devotee in his form. He is not formless. Vasudeva is not formless. For it is stated in this verse that as soon as the Lord reveals himself, the devotee offers his obeisances. Obeisances are offered to a person, not to anything impersonal. One should not accept the Mayavada interpretation that Vasudeva is impersonal. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Prapadyate, one surrenders. One surrenders to a person, not to impersonal non-duality. Whenever there is a question of surrendering or offering obeisances, there must be an object of surrender, or obeisances. Om Gyanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Umritamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'm always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is always pure consciousness, in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Vasudeva, is revealed without any covering. So this was a really long purport. If anyone wants to say something they remember from the purport, so I feel like we're all on the same page.
If you develop the Vasudeva consciousness, that's when Vasudeva reveals himself.
In the heart, yeah.
Obeisances is to a person, not to some person.
Yeah, that's the last point. So that point, that obeisances is offered to a person, and that Lord Shiva is saying he's always offering obeisances to Krishna, is because of this pastime that we're in the middle of, where Daksha got offended because Lord Shiva didn't offer him respect, but Lord Shiva was actually offering obeisances to Paramatma in everyone's heart. So there was no reason to get offended. But yeah, we'll get into it in a bit. Anyone else want to share something they remember from the purport? Yeah?
There's just one line where Srila Prabhupada was saying that if one desires, then the mental activities and everything else can be controlled because Krishna will sort of take over. I can't remember the exact words.
Wow. So it's kind of that verse from Bhagavad Gita. If one surrenders, if one surrenders, then Krishna helps him.
But if one
Not fall
desires,
to Maya.
can subdue all material activities of the senses, and the Lord, by manifesting his spiritual energy, can reveal himself to the pure devotee. So it's amazing that it's through desire.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so I've been listening to Urmila Devidasi, her grace, her classes on this canto, because I'm actually in this canto, but a bit further down, and I just find it fascinating how she gets into the psychology of each person in the pastime, and it just like, you kind of like really get into it. And so I was just reflecting on how Bhagavatam is full of pastimes where there's an example of who to aspire to be like in this case Lord Shiva, and who to not follow in their footsteps, basically, like because of whatever action or mentality they're displaying, like in this case, Daksha. And I was thinking this is very similar to another pastime where the person that is offending thinks they are being offended. And this is very common, that we think someone has offended us, but maybe we're actually offending them. And can you think of any pastime from Bhagavatam where this was the case? Yeah? Yeah, that's one. Or Indra, he thought that the Brajavasis were offending him by not doing puja in his honor. Yeah?
I guess before this pastime, there was King Chitraketu, and Parvati thought he was offending Lord Shiva, and so she offended him.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many. It's interesting. We need to really be self-aware and kind of, yeah. I was thinking about this pastime of Ambarish and Durvasa Muni because my daughter wanted me to read that book. We have like a simple version of the book, and she wanted me to read it over and over again, so there's no other option but to be meditating on that pastime. But it's really interesting how Durvasa Muni manifested this huge monster, and Ambarish Maharaj didn't even get scared. Like, that shows the caliber of a pure devotee. He's just like, yeah, Krishna I'm Krishna's. If he wants to protect me, he will. If he doesn't, he won't. You know, like completely surrendered. It's just so inspiring. And Krishna, of course, did protect him with his chakra. So in this case, we have this pastime where now, after Daksha has insulted Shiva in this big sacrifice, and Lord Shiva didn't even react either. He didn't try to defend himself. He was in trance. He was satisfied. He was self-controlled. He didn't need to prove himself to anyone. And in the verse before, a few verses before, he's saying that being one who is conducted by false ego and thus always distressed, both mentally and sensually, cannot tolerate the opulence of self-realized persons. Being unable to rise to the standard of self-realization, he envies such persons as much as demons envy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he's explaining what was going on in Daksha's consciousness at that time. Because Daksha, Marichi, and Vasishta were performing this sacrifice. So it was, their sacrifice. And when he entered, he expected everyone to offer him respects. And when Lord Brahma didn't, it's fine, he's my father. He's, the creator. But that Shiva didn't offer him respects, it just hurt his false ego so much he couldn't tolerate it. Because Lord Shiva had taken, materially speaking, the position of his son-in-law. But he didn't recognize that Lord Shiva is an amazing personality. He's one of the three avatars with Lord Vishnu and Lord Brahma. So if Daksha were to be, if he had been in a more, Krishna conscious state of mind, he would have been happy to see Lord Shiva being in trance, glorifying his Lord, because the whole point of a sacrifice is to satisfy Vishnu, and Lord Shiva was satisfying Vishnu. So it's quite ironic that Daksha got to the point of insulting Lord Shiva. He said very horrible things. He said, unclean, not qualified, impure, mad, inauspicious, his heart filled with nasty things. Imagine someone saying that to you. Your heart is filled with nasty things. It's like, oh my God. It's like so hurtful. But if you're, detached and Krishna knows your heart, and if that's even true, you're like, what can I do, Krishna? Please help me. But he didn't even try to defend himself. So Daksha he even, Prabhupada says that he's even subtly criticizing his father, Lord Brahma, for advising him to marry Sati to Shiva. So this is coming from way back that there's an expression in Spanish, but I guess in English it would be the last straw. Like in Spanish it's the drop that overflows the cup of water. And so this isn't something that came out of the blue. Daksha had resentment that his pet daughter, his most dear Sati, was married to Lord Shiva, which he thought he wasn't qualified for her. And so he was kind of subtly criticizing his father for advising him to marry Sati to Shiva. So imagine later on in the next chapter we hear that a person that is, what did it say? I wrote it down somewhere. No, he's become blind. He's become so blind. Yeah, if one becomes proud of the opulences Krishna has given them, this is really important for us because Krishna gives everyone opulences. We all have some talent in some way or the other. So if we become proud, then what happens is we become blind in the sense that we lose our good sense and we cannot appreciate great persons. And like we know, when we can't appreciate great persons, great personalities, that's when we start having that critical mentality, and Lord Chaitanya says it's the mad elephant, start destroying our bhakti creeper. So that's one kind of warning that we find in this pastime, to be very careful not to become proud of whatever qualities Krishna has given us to serve him, and understand that he's the ability in man. And also, I was hearing from a class by Mother Irmela that she was saying how in the Bhagavatam it says that people that aren't devotees don't have any good qualities, and sometimes you're like, but they do. I know so many people that are really nice, they're really sweet, they're kind, they're caring. But the point that she made is that those qualities are out the window. They're threatened when they're not there anymore when the person is provoked. So then the real stuff comes out. And I was reading this quote from Bhakti Tirtha Swami that was saying something along the lines that if you, juice a lemon, then lemon juice comes out. So even if we're provoked, we're like, oh, it's justified. But even if we're provoked and then this nasty anger comes out, it's because it was already inside. If not, it wouldn't come out. Like lemon juice comes out, not watermelon juice, but lemon juice comes out of a lemon. And I was thinking, we all have, Krishna gives us these opportunities to test and see what comes out. In my situation, my 2-year-old toddler tests me every day. And it's like trying to be patient and tolerant and not get angry and snap. But we probably all have these situations come up in our bhakti to purify ourselves and to come to a higher level. If we're only engaging, if we're only surrounded by devotees, then it's the devotees that will bring those out. So it's actually, they're just helping us to purify us. So and then we have, the case of Lord of Daksha that we don't want to follow and try to learn from his example, and he's serving in that way in this pastime. And we have the role of Shiva that we do want to follow. The verse is saying someone that is always, he's saying that he's always engaged in Krishna consciousness. And that is something that hopefully everyone in this room wants to be in that state of Krishna consciousness, constantly, always, right? And so, for those of you that are in that state, maybe this isn't so relevant, but for those of us that aren't, we can recognize that we're in that anartha nivritti. So we're already engaging bhajana kriya in devotional service, maybe for many, many years. And we want to get to the stage of nishta, of steadiness, where we're always in Krishna consciousness. So whilst we're in this stage of anartha nivritti, of cleaning the dirty things in the heart, like I was saying in the purport, the cleansing the mirror, what can we do to cultivate that state of Krishna consciousness and to be in this Vasudeva state? So one thing I wanted to share, one way, very crucial way, is in the quality, Hare Krishna, of our japa. So like my friend Achyuta Baba was mentioning yesterday, the essence that she heard from Govinda Kinkara's offering to his Guru Maharaj yesterday, the essence of Krishna consciousness is 3 things. Vaishnava Seva, Jiva Doya, and Namaruchi. So those are the 3 key points that we try to focus on. And if we're actually doing those 3 things, if we have, taste for the holy name, if we're serving the devotees, and we're trying to, be merciful and give Krishna consciousness to people that want it and don't have it, then we're actually living in Vaikuntha. As simple as that. There's no reason to feel like, oh, I want to get out of this material world and all this like negating. No, we can be, in Vasudeva state like Lord Shiva is, even in the material world. Isn't that amazing? Like, that we can actually be in that state constantly. So, Namaruchi, how to get taste for the holy name. So it doesn't really depend on us. Krishna gives us the taste, but fortunately, because I'm up most of the night, I got to do a japa retreat online that was at 11:30 in the evening on Sunday with Mahatma Prabhu. And I just wanted to share with you the things that he was saying to improve our japa. Hopefully this will be encouraging. So first of all, he was saying that this pastime of one devotee asking Prabhupada about, being inattentive, is that offensive? Is that one of the offenses of the holy name? And Srila Prabhupada said, if you are trying to control your mind, then it's not offensive. Nectar. And then he shared that Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur had said, this is paraphrasing, unless we make our best effort sincerely, we cannot attract Krishna's mercy. So that's the way to attract Krishna's mercy, is by making our best effort. So he was saying to write the word effort and put it in a wall or somewhere, or just to remember. That's what is in our control, our effort. Like you're saying, our desire. And so the difference between nama aparada and nama basa, so offensive chanting and shadow chanting, is making the effort to chant attentively. And so he was saying that we should, not we should, but this is one thing he was saying we could do, is to periodically rate our japa. Like he was saying from 1 to 10. 10 being, Lord Shiva's consciousness, Vasudeva consciousness that he has for Lord Vishnu, and 1 being like not even nothing, not even trying really, just like getting them done kind of thing. Where would we rate our japa? And he was saying, I'm trying for everyone to be on at least 6, constantly, every time you chant, not just every woo, this was amazing, but our constant japa should be, high quality, giving the best we can. And he was saying, when you finish your rounds, do you feel satisfied? That was one indicator. Anyways, and then this is really interesting. He said to everyone to write down 5 reasons, and maybe I'll ask you guys to do 3 because, it'll be easier and faster. Think of 3 reasons why improving your japa is important. So I'll give you a couple minutes. Okay, so if you haven't thought of 3, I hope you at least thought of 1. I know we're in New Zealand, but not everyone is a Kiwi here, so maybe someone would like to share, even a Kiwi. If not, it's fine, but if anyone wants to share one of the reasons why they think improving their japa is crucial to their spiritual life. Yes?
So it purifies the heart, qualifies it from one loss, and one day goes to the
Can you say it louder so that
purifies the heart,
qualifies one for more advancement? One day will reveal to me who I am eternally. Yeah, it's really nice. Thank you for sharing. Prabhu, you had your hand up? Yeah.
So you're taking a step closer to Krishna?
Taking a step closer to Krishna. That's really nice. Yeah. Anyone else want to share? Yeah.
So we can experience Krishna?
We can experience Krishna. Krishna is no different to his name. Yeah.
You can feel his presence.
So we can feel his presence.
And then the Bible is thinking, so whatever we are reading in the Shastras, how we come everything, essentially the essence is pure japa.
Can Can you say that again?
So when we read
When we read
Srimad
Bhagavatam and Shastra,
the essence of the Shastra is
the essence of the Shastra
offenses,
is to chant without offenses.
pure chant.
Pure chanting.
So that ultimately we are reading and aiming.
Sorry?
Ultimately that's what we are reading and aiming for.
Yes. Ultimately, that's what we're aiming for when we read. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else want to share? Yeah.
We can bring the best out of us.
Yes. So we can bring the best out of us. Yeah. In our pure state, we all have wonderful Vaishnava qualities coming from Krishna. Anyone else? I wrote down so that I can be Krishna conscious during the day, and so that I can please my Guru Maharaj and Krishna, and some were similar to what others have said. Thank you for sharing. Anyways, and so that is kind of like the motivation for us in our japa. Those reasons that are really personal for us and why we want to improve it is actually what will help us to put that effort. And one other thing he was saying is that before we start chanting, to try to unplug our life, our service, our worries, our plans, whatever, just to come into another mood, another state of consciousness. And he was saying it's like japa unplugged, and to come to the state, the proper consciousness, change gears. So that's really important before we start, so that our mind is in the right place and not like super active and thinking about this, that, and the other. It helps with the wandering mind, he was saying. And the attitude of prayer that we hear a lot, but it's important. That Bhaktivinoda Thakur was saying to meditate on the meanings is actually it's a mood of prayer. That the way he was describing the meanings of the holy name is Krishna, please engage me. Oh, energy of the Lord, please engage me in your service. And just a little bit of a tangent in terms of prayer. Recently, I got a chance to reflect a lot on prayer, because that was one of the islands in the Navadvip Parikram, and I got that island to present Vandanam. And there's this book that I was reading from Sattvaru Goswami, which is called Vandanam, and he was saying these two, offering prayers to the deities and offering prayers to Krishna that are from, exalted devotees, and trying to get into the mood of the prayer, and also offering our own personal prayers. And I want to ask. We have 9 on these dogs. Oh, thank you. Very important message. And so, those of you that were there, do you remember any of the sections of prayer? Do you remember?
From what you were saying?
Yeah. So a prayer usually has different aspects to it. So one of them was, oh my God. Yes? Okay. So one of the aspects of prayer is that the main aspect that we see in the prayers of the exalted devotees is that they're praising the Lord. Like even in the morning when we're chanting, and so we're just, praising Krishna, how beautiful he is, playing his flute, how his senses can do everything. And so that's and the praise is because when you love someone, you're always praising them, isn't it? If you really love someone, you're always saying, like, oh, you're so good at this. At least parents, I see, at least I do, like with Nainamini. And, oh, you're so cute, oh, you're so sweet. Whatever she does, I'm like, oh, you know. And with friends, I'm always thinking in my mind, wow, this is such an amazing devotee, you know. And so we're always kind of, whoever we love, we're always praising them in our minds. So that's part of the prayer. And then being grateful, that was one of them, like gratitude. And it's actually a really important aspect, because, you know, now everyone's like, oh yeah, the attitude of gratitude, but they're not even, I'm not saying everyone, but who are they grateful to? Like, to the universe? Like, it's just like so impersonal. But we actually know that everything's coming from Krishna, so we can actually be grateful to a person. Like we're hearing, you know, like we offer obeisances to a person, to Krishna. So we can also be grateful for everything that Krishna has given us in terms of materially and spiritually. We're just so fortunate, and to be in that mindset of how fortunate we are really helps to chant sincerely as well, and helps to, you know, not become offensive as well with others, because we understand that we don't deserve anything and we've been given so much mercy. And then another aspect was to feel a bit of repentance, well, not a bit, a lot of repentance for all the nonsense we might have done, even if it's not in this life, in past lives, because we're still here, and or even being regretful that we're not on a higher level of Krishna consciousness where we could be. I remember many years ago, this person came up to me when I was working in Queenstown, distributing, selling jewelry, and this man came and he said, I can know about you, if you write something down I can read what's going on. And I'm like, I didn't really believe it, but I was convinced by who I was with to do it, and I was like, okay. So I just wrote stuff in Spanish so he couldn't understand what I was writing, just so that, and he looked at the handwriting and he said, in your meditation, you are the one that you're holding yourself back. And I'm like, what? But I started crying because there was truth to that. And that's like, you know, when I hear Mother Urmila say that it's like we're holding on to the tree and we're saying, like, let go of me, but we're the ones that are like not letting go of all our material desires. And so it boils down to how much do we want Krishna? And so it's kind of embarrassing that I just shared that, but yeah, we are the ones that are boycotting ourselves. And that's why in our prayer we can say, I'm so sorry for boycotting myself, for doing all this nonsense, and I want to stop. Please help me, Krishna. And then the last one is, you know, please help me, Krishna, asking for something from Krishna, in this case, you know, spiritual strength or protection from my own material desires, so that I don't try to fulfill them and find shelter in them, and just try to find shelter in him and his service and serving his Vaishnavas. Because, you know, like we read in the Bhagavad Gita, those rivers are coming, but we just don't have to act on them. Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I wanted to share about prayer and japa, because in this verse, the reason why I'm sharing all this is because we're hearing, you know, Lord Shiva is in Krishna consciousness, and so how do we get to that point? And so we can focus on improving our japa, which is the time that we have with Krishna. Like during the day, we're basically working for Krishna by everything we do. You know, I'm looking after my children that are Krishna's devotees. And some devotees, you know, are distributing books. Some are working to maintain the Krishna conscious family. Whatever it is, during the day, we're actually doing work for Krishna. It's like a parent basically working to maintain their family, but it's not like that's all they do. they come home and they hang out with their family as well. So the japa is our hanging out with Krishna. It's our special time with Krishna that we're not actually working for him, we're just trying to relish that relationship. And so, yeah, so it's quite important to put our energy in that. And hopefully with improving our japa and trying to come into a more prayerful mood, we can start tasting more of this Krishna consciousness that Lord Shiva is in. And a side benefit is that we won't get offended when someone says something. And so then there's not that many dramas in our lives, and we can just, sincerely serve each other with whoever we're living around and grow and please Krishna in that way. Yeah, so I think that's all I want to say. Does anybody want to share something or ask a question or make a correction or anything that they thought might help them? Yeah.
See, to become more Krishna conscious, you have to desire but also surrender.
Yeah.
So how it's like not to want surrender but desire.
Desire to surrender? I don't see it as, how do you see it as an oxymoron?
Well, to desire is something that you want. I want Krishna, I want you, but to surrender to Krishna, you just say, I've just let myself go. You're not desiring yourself, surrendering, letting yourself go. So it's almost like, I want you, but I just don't want to surrender.
I don't know. I've never thought of it like that. I've always thought of it like have lots of desire, but spiritual desires. Because if you when you read about the Rajavasis, the devotees in Vrindavan, it's not like they don't have desires. They have so many desires, but they're all linked to Krishna. So I think we can desire to have spiritual desires, and that is surrender. Because as soon as we're desiring, for ourselves, that's when separate from Krishna, that's when it's like we get into trouble, and that's why we're here. But I don't know. I think that if, can you give me an example? Like one desire, something that.
I'm almost impatient sometimes. Krishna, I really want to be with you. I really want to know you. I'm kind of desiring. But then I think that when you're saying just to surrender, it's like kind of taking a step back, saying, okay, I want it. Maybe I should just surrender, so I'm stepping back, and that takes away the desire.
I think that's a really good mood to cultivate. I really want to be with you. I think it's great. I don't think you should stop it. That's what makes you advance. Yeah, makes us advance. Because the thing is, if we're not on nishta, we're not on steady consciousness, it means that sometimes we're not desiring that, we're desiring other stuff. And that's what we're trying to kind of purify. But sometimes we can use those desires in Krishna consciousness, and sometimes we can't. So it depends what desire it is. Yeah.
This point I just want to add something.
Yeah, of course.
So I was listening to the class by Radhanath Swami, and he was talking about when Prabhupada used to go out for his morning walks, so only the senior devotees were allowed to go with him, senior disciples. So there's one morning, quite a few devotees, senior devotees were there, and during morning walks, all the devotees used to ask questions and used to answer all the questions. This one devotee, he was quiet the whole time, he didn't say anything. But when Prabhupada was leaving, and he was sat in his car, he ran towards the car, and then he was holding the door, and he asked Prabhupada, I just want to know, I've got a question for you. What is the one thing we need to have to be Krishna consciousness? What is the one thing we should be able to? And Prabhupada's answer was desire. I think that
that greed, spiritual greed, that loba that we hear. That's if you have it, purchase it immediately. That's it. Huh? At any price. Yeah. And if we're around devotees that are trying to have that desire, then it helps because it multiplies it even more. So that helps as well.
If we don't desire, then we're not gonna.
Yeah, how are we going to get there? Yeah. Yeah.
Just on the same question, I was thinking that if you have a desire to be with Krishna, but you think that having to surrender to him is counterintuitive, then maybe there's something that you need to give up so that you can actually be with him, and that giving that up or whatever it is, that's actually your surrender. That's actually an action forward, not an action back. Surrender isn't an action back, it's an action forward.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. Have a very Krishna conscious day. Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada ki.